So, what is justice? I mean, really. It's a question we bump into all the time, right? In the news, in our own lives. Well, believe it or not, over 2,000 years ago, Plato's Republic kicked off the ultimate investigation into that exact question. And you know what? The arguments are still incredibly sharp and totally relevant today. So, let's dive in and see what we can find. Okay, so picture this. Our story doesn't start in some stuffy academic. It begins in the bustling port of Athens. Socrates, our philosophical hero, is just trying to head home, but he gets roped into a conversation at a rich merchant's house. And what begins as just a casual chat about getting old, well, it quickly spirals into a debate that literally shaped the course of Western thought. And this is the central mystery they stumble upon. The old merchant, Cephalus, he kicks things off with a simple idea. Justice is just, paying your debts and telling the truth. But Socrates, being Socrates, starts asking his usual tricky questions and shows that, well, it's not nearly that simple. It becomes pretty clear pretty fast that all the easy, common sense answers just aren't going to cut it. So, with those simple ideas off the table, the first real challenger steps up to the plate. After his dad leaves the conversation, a young guy named Polemarchus takes his spot. He's called the heir to the argument, and he's all set to defend a much more, let's say, warrior-like view of justice. Now, Paul Marcus's definition is something you've probably heard a million times in one form or another. Justice is loyalty. It's about helping your friends and hurting your enemies. Sticking by your team, your city, your people. In his world, justice is all about patriotism, really, a devotion to your own. This is where Socrates just completely unravels the whole thing with one simple, but honestly devastating question. We all think we know who our friends are, right? But can't we be wrong? I mean, haven't you ever thought someone was on your side only to find out later they were anything but? And boom, there it is, the fatal flaw. If our judgment about who's a friend and who's an enemy can be flat out wrong, then Polemarchus's definition could actually lead us to harm our real friends and help our actual enemies. Socrates shows that this kind of blind loyalty is just way too unstable to be a solid foundation for justice. And Polemarchus, he's left totally speechless. Okay, so just as the conversation grinds to a halt, this new character just bursts onto the scene. He's way more aggressive. His name is Thrasymachus, and he's this hard-boiled realist who's been sitting there listening impatiently, and you can just tell he's had enough of what he thinks is a bunch of pleasant nonsense. Thrasymachus doesn't waste any time. He drops this absolute bombshell. He basically says, justice? That's just a fancy word the powerful invented to describe the rules they make for their own benefit. For him, it's nothing more than a tool the ruling class uses to keep the weak in line and hold on to their power. He paints this brutally cynical picture of the world, doesn't he? For Thrasymachus, politics is a total zero-sum game. There are winners and there are losers, period. He thinks rulers only make laws to help themselves, and if you're someone who obeys those laws, well, you're playing a sucker's game. He actually argues that the truly smart person is the one who pursues injustice, who takes whatever they can whenever they can get away with it. But watch this. Socrates uses the exact same line of attack that worked on Polemarchus. He asks, okay, if justice is whatever is in the interest of the stronger, doesn't that mean the stronger have to know what's actually good for them? I mean, what if they pass a law that they think will help them, but it actually ends up hurting them? We all know people in power make mistakes all the time. And this leads to this incredibly dramatic moment. Thrasymachus is forced to admit that, yeah, okay, even raw power needs knowledge to actually work. But it's more than that. He's shamed. He blushes. He suddenly realizes his argument is basically a defense of pure, absolute tyranny, of doing the most injustice you possibly can to other people. And for all his tough talk, he just can't quite stomach the logical endpoint of his own cynical worldview. Now, you might think the argument is over, right? Thrasymachus has been silenced. But nope, his argument is far from dead. In fact, it gets resurrected in a much stronger, much more persuasive form by two of Socrates' own friends, the young, idealistic brothers, Glaucon and Edemontis. See, Glaucon isn't satisfied at all. He basically says Thrasymachus was a wimp who got embarrassed way too easily. He challenges Socrates to go deeper. He says, look, forget about whether justice gets you a good reputation or keeps you out of jail. We want you to defend justice itself. Is it a good thing to have, even if absolutely no one is watching? And to make his point absolutely crystal clear, Glaucon tells this incredible story. There's this humble shepherd, right? He finds a magic ring that makes him completely invisible. And with this absolute power, with a 0% chance of getting caught, what's the first thing he does? He uses it to commit the ultimate injustices and seizes the entire kingdom for himself. And that story just perfectly lays out the core of their challenge, not just to Socrates, but to all of us. Is justice just some kind of social agreement we follow because we're afraid of getting punished? I mean, really think about it. If you could get away with absolutely anything, would you still choose to do the right thing? This is such a deep and difficult challenge that Socrates actually admits he can't answer it directly. He can't just, look inside a person's soul and point and say, there it is, that's justice. So he makes this absolutely brilliant pivot. He proposes a huge thought experiment to try and get to the answer from a different angle. He suggests that trying to spot justice in a single person is like trying to read tiny, microscopic letters from far away. It's just too hard to see clearly. So he says, okay, instead of that, let's build a perfectly just city right here in our conversation. Let's build it from the ground up. The hope is that by seeing what justice looks like on this massive, magnified scale, they'll finally be able to understand what it looks like on the tiny scale of an individual. And this idea becomes the central engine for the rest of the entire book. The city is a direct analogy, a mirror for the human soul. Socrates is going to argue that the structure of a good city, with its different classes and jobs all working in harmony, is exactly like how a person should govern their own soul, balancing its competing parts, reason, spirit, and desire. And so the real quest begins. Socrates has just set the stage for one of the most ambitious projects in the history of human thought. And it leaves us with this huge provocative question. Is it really possible that by designing a fictional, perfect city, we can actually uncover the blueprint for how to live a truly just and good life?